been quite a discussion over the past couple of years or so whether organisations like GetUp, which is an advocacy organisation, or a think tank like the Institute of Public Affairs should be revealing and be transparent about where those entities get their money from. And there's recently been calls, especially for GetUp, to be categorised as an associated entity of political parties, of the Greens and the ALP, Australian Labor Party, and therefore it needs to govern itself under Australian Electoral Commission rules and publish the sources of its funding. It's interesting where what's happening in the US is is far from what's happening in Australia. Over the past 4 or 5 years, big think tanks there and advocacy organisations have been far more transparent of where their funding is coming from, and a lot of those think tanks, in order to maintain their credibility as advocacy organisations and as think tanks, see that being transparent is a way to almost solidify their reputation, and it is a plus for them. In Australia, there seems to be a bit of an allergy to that. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, in the political sphere, the political parties will no doubt keep debating this, but what transparency does, and a lot of corporations are committed to transparency when they're funding any political process, or if they're giving money to political parties to ensure that the wheels of democracy keep turning, if that's what they do, and some do, and some companies say we do not donate to political parties or political processes at all. So, it just depends on the governance of the organisation and the culture. But the important thing is, if activist groups, if advocacy groups, if think tanks are out there in the marketplace of ideas, then transparency is a very good way to ensure that everyone participating in that marketplace ideas, including voters, including general members of the community, including government and public policy makers, understand where the money is coming from. So from a transparency point of view, we just note that the movement in the UK and the US, which are comparable political systems as ours in many senses, because there is contested policy, there is a marketplace ideas. The trend in those jurisdictions is for more transparency, not less, among advocacy groups and think tanks. And that's just something to note, and understanding why that transparency has helped those organisations, those advocacy and think tank organisations, could be very instructive as we discuss and debate what may or may not happen in Australia around regulation of funding of think tanks and advocacy activist groups like GetUp.